So it's interesting. We live in a day and age where everyone carries in their pocket or their purse or their backpack a cell phone that runs a multitude of applications. And the applications aren't just put on here on my phone, and I'm sure on your phones too. There's an app that's an app store where I can get on there and almost download something to do whatever it is that I want. For example, I'm laying in my hotel last night wanting to go to sleep, and it's just too quiet in the room, and I feel I need white noise. I need something to help me go to sleep. And I get on my phone, I get on the app store, and I download a fan app, and next thing you know, I am sound asleep and getting ready for today's workshop, and bright and shiny in here today. So wouldn't it be so cool if we could get on our phones and there was this CFS app store, and we could right then and there, whatever it is we need for our mission and our project, download it and plug it right into our system. So this app store, this is something that we've already thought about, and a lot of that thinking probably came from this whole app concept that we're so familiar with our cell phones and computers. We've talked about it. We've been talking about it for years, and in coming up with this application inventory for this workshop, I feel like, wow, having a CFS app store is actually now becoming a real thing. Oh, I need the... Oh, maybe I do have to copy this on. So we need to download an app to... Well, I can do it this way. There we go. So right now, our application catalog, I was tasked to come up with an inventory and put together a catalog. So I used the CFS community list. I put out a call, hey everyone, what are your apps? Most of our apps, they come from the missions that are using the CFS, Morpheus and GPM and LADI, and there's, we're gonna take a peek inside the catalog. There's a lot of missions. I have in the catalog right now, there's over 100 applications. We have applications from Goddard, from Ames, from Johnson, from Glenn, IVNV, Johns Hopkins APL, Emergent, worked with DARPA on their F6 project. We have some apps, some are open source from them, and Windhover Labs. And so one of the questions I got in putting together this catalog and querying people and finding out what apps they have out there is, they said, oh, do you want the mission-specific apps? And thinking like, oh, only my mission is going to be using these apps, or are we just trying to catalog what's open source and we can get out to the public? And I started thinking, well, what would the benefits be of including everything, including what's open source, what's generic, what's mission specific? And there's plenty of benefits in gathering all these apps and sticking them in a catalog and getting them all together. Some of the benefits that I thought of are, it's this last one here, it gives insight into the workload that a project and mission had to do. You can see, I have in the catalog, and we'll take a peek in there, of what apps were actually cloned and owned. So we talk about how CFS, we want to promote reuse, but when it comes to the mission-specific apps, there is going to be some clone and own. For example, a SpaceWire application, we've seen that one was developed on GPM, one was developed on MMS, but that SpaceWire app, there's commonalities where it can just get picked up, it can plug into another mission's CFS system, and the mission-specific features can change, and it could still, when working on that app, save that mission a whole lot of time and effort and money. It also promotes the collaboration. We can look in the catalog, we can see, wow, what other missions had to develop a SpaceWire app? How do I develop a SpaceWire app? Maybe if I get on the phone and call this person who had developed GPM's SpaceWire app, they can give me some insight. So when we look in the catalog, we're going to see which apps are open source, which ones are available through release, and which ones don't have any licensing at all. But this doesn't mean that we can't use the catalog, find out what other people did, and get on the phone and talk to them and collaborate and start sharing knowledge and taking reuse to another level, where we're reusing our expertise as well as the software. Free advertising, just getting your app in the catalog is saying, hey, look what I did. Or for the companies that are putting out apps that are possibly trying to sell these apps, this is free advertising. It does promote the sharing and reuse. Also, it gives insight. It wasn't until Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon that we knew that this is possible. This is something that we can do as human beings. And a lot of people won't take that step until they know that it's possible. And so by looking into the catalog, we get insight into seeing what's possible. So where is this application catalog? In preparation for this workshop, I put the catalog together. It's an Excel spreadsheet. I published it into a PDF, which we're going to be taking a peek at today. But the plans is to get it on our public website, and there's a little screenshot of what that website looks like, and enhance it so it does work like that app store that we're so familiar with on our cell phone. I'd like to see a search engine with configurable displays. This too is where we can use your help, and what's your favorite search engine? What would help make it so you can find the apps that you're looking for? Right now, the electronic copy, again, that's the only form that the catalog is in, and I'm happy to give you a copy. I have it here on my memory stick, and I can also email it to you. I actually should probably just email it out to the community list would be a good thing to do. So we need your help with getting, I've collected a list of all the apps that I know that are out there from getting insight through the community. But even still, there's a lot of NASA projects, there's a lot of folks outside of NASA that are using the CFS. I actually have, I'm not going to show it here, but I have a chart where I'm collecting the logos of all the CFS users, and I can't even display it anymore because it's so cluttered and busy. It's blinding, and but it's just showing that the user community is growing, which means as the user community grows, the number of applications grow. And so this is one of the challenges with the catalog, in that it's voluntary. It requires people to participate, for people to raise their hand and say, hey, I have an app, I want to publish it, I want to get it in the catalog. I'd even like to I'm interested if anyone here has
Hello?
any apps that they know that aren't in the catalog that we can even get in there, like right here, right now, today. Okay, let's take a peek inside the catalog. So that came up here, but not there. Let's try this. There we go. I'm going to make it bigger too. There we go. So some of the things I wanted to point out with the catalog is the information I'm trying to include in the catalog. And this again too is where we need your help. If there's things we can add in here to help it just expand the benefits of the catalog. So we have the application title, the name, any release information. Software type, and right now it's whether this was commercially owned and created, NASA owned and created, government owned and created, if it's open source, if there's a license, yes or no, if that license, if it does exist, if it's government only.
Well, just to clarify, all the CFS applications are NASA open source, so there is a license.
Right, there is yes, so the software type, when it says it's open source, usually that license checkbox is going to say yes. And if it doesn't, then there's an error in the catalog. So then a point of contact of who can I contact to find out more information about this application. The email of the point of contact. What's the status of the app? Is it in development? Is it in test? Is it already released? And then any notes, and these notes might include, if it is open source, where can I get it from? Are there special instructions type of things? So like I shared, I have like there's 130 some applications in here. We're not going to go through all of them. I did highlight some that the rest of this part of the workshop we're going to be talking a little bit more about. One of them was it's called the File Commander Extended application. I'm not going to get into the details now. I have a few slides on that one. But some of the other things I wanted to point out in the catalog is, so here again it shows all our open source standard checksum file manager. Then we have some new ones, a DTN application here. But anything that doesn't say, let me see if I can find an example here. For example, here's one, the Jedi Health and Status Message application. So this shares that this was an app, it was a new app developed by the NICER mission that the Jedi mission said, hey, I can use that. And they took it and they cloned and owned it for their mission. So it came from NICER Heritage and it was tailored for the Jedi, specific needs. And an interesting thing to point out about this heritage, if you were to scroll through this catalog, you'll see every single mission has a command ingest and a telemetry output application. And they're typically taken from another mission, heritage mission, and then tailored for the specifics of the preceding mission. And it's marking these things can show us, hey, which applications out there could we possibly make a few changes, put some kind of wrapper around it so we don't have to do this clone and own. And so the catalog can be used to kind of give us insight on where are some of the next steps that we can take as a community and and really promote the reuse in the app world and genericize some of these things. And so we are going to, again, command ingest and telemetry output were two applications that every mission has used, has cloned and owned, and Lori's group and team at Johnson, they took that step and said, hey, we want to create a generic CI and TO application. So I've highlighted those. We have a couple slides coming up, and Lori was kind enough to share some insight on those two apps. And let's see, since I have this open, before I close it, are there any questions on the catalog? Okay, I will go back to the presentation. So I just wanted to, this was one of the new apps, or an app that was originally developed by GPM, and it was highly regarded by the flight ops team, and then it was cloned and owned by NICER and JEDI, and at that point, our development team at Goddard said, hey, this looks like an app that makes a good candidate. We can genericize it and put it back into the open source reuse library. So again, the motivation, it was highly regarded by GPM. Right now it's still under development. We've already gone through requirements reviews, design reviews. We still need to go, the code is complete, we still need to do a code review, but we have our unit tests complete. We also have in the plans to do a full functional build test and get it, follow all of our Class B processes. So right now, this is an app that's maintained by Goddard. And what does this app do? So GPM originally built this app because they had two instruments that took in very long commands. These commands had a lot of data with them, and the ground system had a limit on the size of commands that could be uplinked from the ground to the spacecraft. So they came up with this idea: if we just insert these instrument commands as the command CCSDS packet into files, we can uplink the files and then use, it was File Commander to distribute those CCSDS command packets from the file to the instruments. So after GPM was launched, the flight operations team said, wow, this is a great application. We can actually use this to make macros for common command sequences that we're doing in routine operations. And so they've been using it in that capacity. NICER then found out about it, the NICER mission, and they also needed a way to stream commands to their Star Tracker and GDS. And so they took GPM's File Commander into their flight system. Then they also found early in development that this was also a great tool for when apps that interfaced with hardware weren't integrated yet into the system. They could simulate the packets that came from those apps to the other apps that were already in the system and use it for simulation. JEDI found out about it and said, wow, that is a great app, and they took it on and are using it in the same manner that NICER is. So Goddard, for all the open source generic apps that were developed there, what they would do is perform this heritage analysis and go and look into all the ways that an app had been used and then possible enhancements of how can we make this better. And it was the how it was used for simulation that we came up with the idea that you might want to simulate, have more than one thread of simulation ongoing at a time. So the GPM and Nicer and Jedi versions of the app, it'll only do one file at a time, and this is where the extended came for FCX, where it will actually spawn child tasks and run multiple files at the same time. So there's a context diagram. It's just a very simple app. It's all command driven. It takes a command to tell it read this file from the file system and go and spawn a child task and start doing your thing. And so in the interest of time, I'm actually going to skip over the commands and I'll hand it over to Lori. Yeah, I can stand and.
Hello? Okay. So, yeah, thanks, Susie. Susie asked me to go over this app quickly just to introduce it because it was developed this year and released as a product. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the first one here. So just like Susie was saying, one of the things we started noticing at Johnson is every time we'd use CFS on a project, be it a prototype or a vehicle or whatever, we would start with the CI and TO lab versions and then just start customizing because that's sort of historically how everything was done. And then we realized that, well, is there a way that we can potentially genericize this, make it configurable, make it reusable? And we looked at it a little bit and we took that on, and I think we did it, so I wanted to kind of tell a little bit about that. So the motivation is a general purpose, configurable, extensible CI and TO to support a variety of COM protocols and transports. And the thought is we put a few in there, we came up with an architecture, and hopefully as folks use this and they come up with new protocols or new transports, you can add them in as sort of a pluggable library, and we provide directions on how to do that. So we did finalize the product. We have it. It's allowed to be released as government purpose release. It's on NASA software.nasa.gov. You can look it up, generic CITO or generic command telemetry. And basically, it's under SUA right now, but it's also currently in a process of trying to be open source released. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, it's at least government purpose, so that's fairly open. It's going to be used, parts of it on Orion, and AA2, Aston Abort 2, is really our current user that's really kind of stressing it out because they're doing, I'll go into the design of it a little bit, but they're doing 4 simultaneous telemetry streams and command streams. So that's kind of taking advantage of some of what we intended. So that's really good. We've provided it. It's on the CFS community server, so I'm waiting for this. Let's NASA share it between ourselves. So I'm not saying anything, but it's over there on Babelfish right now. Just saying. Just saying. So, okay. And we do have it actively maintained at Johnson, so I'm looking for people to use it, and any advice on how to change it or whatever, we'll be happy to have that. So go into what it is, I guess a little bit of the design. So these are the apps, CITO. Okay, next. It's on the app layer. The basic design of this is it's kind of mirrored. So you have a CI main task and a child. I thought TO was the same way, main task and a child. But the strength of this is in the right-hand side of this diagram where you have all these library services. So basically you decide, and this has the full space packet protocol. So it covers the protocols that you might use in a lab for just UDP talking, or if you really want to talk from the space to the ground. between CCSDS or even C3I protocols. So this was developed with, you know, Orion and maybe a HAB or I'll say a normal spacecraft in mind, and so it could talk both of those protocols simultaneously, accept commands and telemetry on both of those simultaneously, and provides real-time reconfigurability for streams in any of those protocols. Next. Yes, this is just sort of the file structure, so you can see what protocols are there, what transport mechanisms are there. Right now we just have the serial and the UDP. We were hoping to add SpaceWire to it, but in line with having the users, whoever needs it, should actually develop that, because we didn't really have a customer. So if somebody wants to add SpaceWire to the transport, that would be a really cool thing, I think, to add to the library. You can see the protocol services that are currently provided. And again, the file structure. And there's full documentation on this, a user's guide, design documents, fully unit tested, all the stuff that we'd want to put in with a productized app. So we went through the design inspection process and things like that. And you get that all if you get this release. You get all the documentation and everything with it. Tells you how to configure it. It comes with examples for multiple streams, for multiple protocols, from the simple to the more complex. So you should be able to take those examples and use it for your own mission. Okay, next. Yeah, that's it. So that's there for folks.